So 2 weeks ago we had the double XP weekend over on Project 99. Now I kept going on about plans that I had with my bard and all this stuff for the double XP weekend over the past few videos, and it all kinda ended up flopping on its head. But regardless, I'll still show you what happened in the end. So my plan was to hand in bone chips in Caladim, followed by Orc and Gnoll Scalps in High Pass, and then Goblin Ears in High Keep. I spent several weeks doing preparation for this. I'd farmed a whole bunch of bone chips in Carnol's Castle, then I farmed Orcs and Gnolls in High Pass, and finally whenever I was on during off-peak and I could get the Goblins in High Keep, I would farm Ears. My hopes were that double XP would count for quest hand-ins and that all of this stuff would get me close to level 30 or at least into my high 20s. My plan from there was to go straight into Fiona and do some swarm kiting. This also required a bit more preparation. I went out and bought all of the bard songs up to level 32. For those that don't know, bards are unique in that instead of getting several new spells every 4 or 5 levels, they get one new spell each level. So as you can see here, this was the night before double XP started, and I'd done my prep and I was ready to go. I had a druid friend lined up to shuttle me around and everything was looking great. Then comes the beginning of double XP weekend, which started early Saturday morning for me. I headed straight to Caladim to begin turning in my bone chips. Now I'd done some testing on bone chip hand-ins several weeks earlier to gauge XP gain so that I could know if the double XP was working for hand-ins or not. And sadly it was not. I almost half expected this though, because nothing is ever easy in EverQuest, so I wasn't that sad about it in the end. I still had enough stuff to hand in to get me fairly high very quickly. The only thing I was kind of sad about was that I had been waiting for the double XP weekend before handing everything in, whereas I could have just done it a week or so earlier, but you know, it's a learning experience. There are several bone chip quests in classic EverQuest. Some are much better than others. Because I was doing this on my bard, I only bothered testing the 3 quests that are for good races, so I'm not sure where the 3 quests for the evil races sit in terms of XP gain. So the 3 places for good races are North Queenos. You can hand 2 bone chips into Lushan Nova Shine. At level 1 this will net you around 10% of your level each turn in. But by level 4 it's dropped down to about 0.5% of a level per turn in. You don't want to do this quest if you're a Necro or a Shadow Knight or even a Cleric who worships Inruk or Bertoxilus, because this is going to get you negative faction hits with the Blood Sabers. Next we have the bone chip quest from Felwythe, the Cleric guild there. This one starts off strong and nets you about 10% per turn in at level 1, but it starts dropping off really fast. By level 3 it'll be down to about 3% per turn in. Finally we have Caladim, the Cleric and Paladin guild here. This is by far the best place to hand in bone chips if you just want to level up off of them. Between levels 1 and 5 they will give you 11% per turn in. At level 6 it drops down to about 9%, then at level 7 it's between 6 and 7%. At level 8 you get 5%, by level 9 it'll drop between 3 and 4% per hand in, and from there on it's 3% until level 12. At level 12 it becomes 2% per hand in, and that's where I stopped because it started getting tedious. All of these figures were recorded on a half elf which has no racial XP modifiers. XP is not the only reason to do the bone chip quests either. They are a really good way to raise faction with their respective cleric and paladin guilds. Some of them are actually crucial if you're a paladin and you plan on doing the Armor of Ro quests. Now I get to head over to the bank and memorize 11 new songs, as well as do a bit of inventory management. I got a port to Rivervale, where I ran through Kithika and onto High Pass to turn in my scalps. Orc scalps can be used from level 1 instead of bone chips, and they will take you a lot further. But because they are worth about 10 plat per single scalp, I figured I'd supplement as much of the cost as I could with bone chips because they're much easier to acquire. That being said, I don't know how many orc scalps it would take to get you from 1 to 12, as I haven't tested this at all. The difference between orc scalps and bone chips is that you get XP for each single scalp that you turn in, and you can still turn them in 4 at a time. So it's like handing in 4 quests at once, whereas bone chips, each hand in is still 4 bone chips, but you're only getting 1 reward. I did the Gnoll Scalps first because they seem to give slightly less experience. At levels 12 and 13 I was getting about 9% of a level per 4 scalps turned in. The few that I had took me to level 14. From here I went on to Orc Scalps, which at level 14 were giving me 14% of a level per 4 that I turned in. At level 15 it goes down to about 12%. Past level 15 it seems to drop by 1% per level for each 4 scalps handed in. It's extremely good XP gain. The Orc Scalps ended up taking me to level 21. From here, it's on to Goblin Ears. Now, these things are really expensive. They're about 30 platinum a pop, and again, I ended up farming all this stuff, so I didn't buy any of it. I heard somewhere that you might not be able to hand Goblin Ears in until you're level 16, but I haven't tested this, so I'm not sure if it's true. But if you do decide to do this pre-level 16 and your ears get swallowed, that's probably why. One thing that really sucks about Goblin Ears is Captain Bozek is often dead because he gets killed by anyone that's leveling off guards. It can be rather frustrating trying to do hand-ins when people are constantly killing him. I ended up running out of ears at around level 24, but they were still giving me 8% of a level per 4 that I handed in. So again, it's really good XP. So all up, I handed in 940 bone chips to get from level 1 to 12, followed by 327 Gnoll and Orc Scalps to get to level 21, followed by 139 Goblin Ears to get to level 24. As I said earlier, unfortunately none of these hand-ins counted as double XP, but all that means is you could go do this right now if you wanted and get pretty similar results. It took me about an hour and a half, including travel time, to get from level 1 to 24, so that ain't bad. From here I moved straight on to Fiona in hopes to start swarming some drawbargs. I had hoped to be a lot closer to 30 and I was worried that I'd be too low for them, but in the end it didn't matter anyway because it was stupid to think that I was the only one that had the idea to play as Bard over the double XP weekend. Basically any zone that you can swarm kite in was a fucking mess over the entire weekend. When I first rocked up in Fiona, every single mob seemed to be running around being swarmed. There were about 15 different Bards in the zone and they were all swarming. It was just stupid. If you remember back when Velios launched and I was getting that horrid lag like desync shit during the GM event, well that was happening to me again out here. I guess something to do with all those mobs moving around and having to update to my client at the same time, it just kind of lagged me out, so I very quickly gave up on the idea of getting much done on my Bard. That did not stop me however from trying and failing a few swarms. It wasn't just Fiona either. I looked into Lake of Ill Omen and the Over There, and they were all the same. Turns out people have some real hate towards Bards during the double XP weekends because they kind of just fuck everything up and create utter chaos, but I just love it, so I don't know, it was amusing to me. But it was at that point that I did decide to swap over to my monk for the rest of the weekend. But before I get into that, I kind of want to go over one more thing. Throughout playing Project 99, I've had this bug or glitch, or I don't know what you want to call it. Basically, when I mouse steer, which I do almost all of the time, especially when I'm pulling on my monk in narrow dungeon corridors, fairly often I'll get this frame drop or screen stutter, I don't know what you want to call it. What happens is as I'm turning my character, the game will freeze, but only for a few frames or maybe half a second. Now it doesn't sound too bad, but the problem is during the freeze, my character will keep turning. So once it unfreezes, I get this sort of huge jump in direction, and a lot of the time, especially if you're in an old classic EQ dungeon like Carnal's Castle or Lower Guck or something like that, it's an absolute nightmare. You get completely turned around and you have no fucking idea where you are, and it's led to several deaths throughout my monk's career. Anyway, I kind of thought this only happened while I was mouse steering, but it turns out every now and then it just happens no matter what. I just never noticed it before because unless I am mouse steering, it doesn't really bother me. That was until I started kiting on my Bard. So for those that don't know, Bards can begin a song or cast, for lack of a better word, while they're still moving. Now this is unique in EverQuest. They also have a few songs that do area of effect damage. Now for a single target, these songs are kind of weak and not very impressive. What makes them so special is they don't seem to have a limit on how many mobs they can hit at a time. So the idea behind a Bard kite is you basically run around and you gather as many monsters as you can. The more you gather, the more effective you are at leveling, because whether you have 5 or 50 mobs, they will theoretically die at the same speed. Now the problem with this is if you take a single hit with 50 mobs chasing you, you're going to die. Full stop. No ifs, no buts, just dead. Mix that in with this frame stutter drop thing and you're going to get very frustrated very fast, which is what happened to me. Now let's take a look at exactly what happened here. As you can see by all the dead mobs around the area, this is mostly the end of the train, pretty much consists of any stragglers I'd picked up along the way. I counted this freeze frame by frame and it lasted 31 frames. I run the game at 60 frames per second, so that's just over half a second of freeze, which is long enough for them to catch up, stun me and kill me. So I did a bit of research, and from what I can tell, the most probable reason for the stutter is that when the game has to access the disk drive that it's being run from, for whatever reason, it will cause a very brief stutter. So, for those of out there who are suffering from the same shit, I've found a solution. I made a brand new titanium installation on my solid state hard drive, and I went onto the forums and I found the DuckSir's all-in-one installer tool. I'll post a link to the thread in the info section of the video below if you want to go check it out. This is 100% supported by the P99 devs and it's all A-OK to use, so don't worry about getting banned or any of that shit. You run the installer, and there's an option to trim down all the stuff that Project 99 doesn't use. I think the titanium client has something stupid like 10 expansions in it. Project 99 only uses 2 of them, so there's a lot of excess files and folders that we don't need. There are also several really amazing fixes that you can apply using the DuckSir all-in-one installer. I'd already done a lot of these manually, but this thing is very noob friendly to use, and you can revert any of the changes you've done back at any time if you're not happy with them. So in the end, I don't know if it was trimming the bloat from my files, or running the game from my SSD, or even applying the multi-core processor fix, but I no longer have the horrible frame stutter and the game loads a lot faster too, which is really nice. So yeah, I really recommend checking out the DuckSir all-in-one installer, and I want to give a really big shout out and a huge thank you to DuckSir for making such an amazing thing. Now this is also why my UI is different in parts of this video. DuckSir has created what I think is one of the best UIs for EverQuest. As much as I love rocking the classic Velios UI on my monk, it doesn't have any form of numerical value for mana. So when I'm playing any of my alts that have mana, it can get very frustrating to only see percentages and not even see your total mana pool. The DuckSir UI gets rid of that problem, not only by showing your current and total mana in numerical values, but it also has percentage values for them as well as your experience bar. The UI comes loaded in with the all-in-one installer, but if you want to load it in manually and not worry about the all-in-one installer, you can do that too. You'll find the link in the same thread that I've got listed below. One final thing I have to quickly mention, the installer has the fix for the human and the half-elf helmet visors. I installed this a long time ago manually, and I meant to mention it in a video but just never got around to it. What this does is restore the transparency to the eye slits in the helmets for the humans and the half-elves, because by default they are broken and they're just a solid colour all the way through. It also fixes a lot of the solid black feet issues that a lot of the races have, and it fixes some other transparency issues. It's another thing I would highly recommend that you would do. You can do it with the installer, but you can also do it manually if you don't want to use the installer. I had intended to cover the rest of the Double XP weekend in this video, but I decided to split it into 2 separate videos, and I'm going to end this one here. I was actually meaning to release this a week ago, but it got delayed, so instead you're most probably just going to see 2 videos within the next few days. I've got a few quick shout outs to give. Too Stronk and Onward, who both saw me while I was in High Keep. I want to give a big thank you to Human for hooking me up with a whole bunch of bone chips. Also, if you're hungry for more EQ content, go check out my buddy Quintal's channel, youtube.com/qfuzzle. He's got a few cool videos posted. You might remember Quintal from some past episodes. He has consistently helped me out with ports and all sorts of things since we were like level 40 in the City of Mist, so another big shout out to him. As you'll probably see in the next video, I hit it pretty hard over the Double XP weekend, so much so that I needed to take a break from all things EverQuest for a while afterwards. But until that video's up, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.